Nate, have you ever heard of the ugly duckling phase?
Is that what you call before you got the transplant?
Great. We knew I was a beautiful duckling before that. No, it's an actual term. It's real. It's in the literature. Clinics use it. Patients use it. Months 1 through 4 after a transplant, your hair sheds and your scalp's healing. You look objectively worse than the day you walked in.
So the procedure that's supposed to fix your hair, it makes your hair look worse first?
For a while, yeah.
That's a hell of a marketing pitch. Come get surgery, look worse for 4 months, trust the process.
All right, well, it's not a marketing pitch. It's biology. And here's the thing. Most of the guys who post the 2 a.m. did my transplant just fail thread on Reddit around week 10, they weren't lied to by the clinic. They just weren't told what to expect. Nobody sat them down and said, hey, by week 10, this is going to look amazing. It's going to look bad. And here's why. Nobody panic.
The actual crisis isn't medical, it's a communication failure.
90% of the time, yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a pretty good episode. Hello and welcome from the land of 10,000 hair follicles here at the offices of the Hair Restoration Institute of Minnesota. This is the Above the Hairline podcast, where we talk about hair loss and hair restoration and the various treatments to help solve that. The mission of the Hair Restoration Institute of Minnesota is to improve lives and restore confidence through thick, healthy hair. We offer virtual and in-person consultations, which are free. You can request yours by visiting hrimn.com. I'm Nate Bruschi.
And I'm Alec Pershawn, and today we're doing something that on paper sounds like the most boring episode we've ever recorded.
Pre-op and post-op instructions.
And is actually, if you're about to get a transplant, the only episode that matters.
So Alec's the guy at HRI who actually sits across the table from patients and walks them through this. So today he's the expert, and I'm asking the dumb guy questions, which is business as usual.
Business as usual.
Okay, so set the scene for me. Someone's had their consultation, they're a good candidate, they book their surgery. So what actually happens between you're booked and you're in the chair?
So a lot of good practices, us included, send out a pre-op package well before the surgery, sometimes as much as 10 weeks out. Instructions, consent forms, what to expect sheet. I usually tell people star this email when they get it so they can come back to it. It doesn't get buried at the bottom of their inbox. The idea is repetition. You tell them once in writing, weeks out, and then again closer to surgery, and then also the day of, because nobody retains a 12-page packet after one read.
You don't think people are rereading their hair transplant packet for fun?
I know I wouldn't.
All right. So walk me through what's going on. What does a patient do 2 weeks out? What's the thing that they have to stop doing?
Yeah. So basically, aspirin and NSAIDs like Advil, Motrin, ibuprofen, those thin your blood. And on a procedure where the whole goal is to make thousands of tiny incisions on your scalp, that's going to be a problem. Aspirin specifically knocks out a patient's platelet ability to clot for its whole lifespan, 7 to 10 days. So we can't just really skip it in the morning. It needs to be a week out.
So taking Advil 10 days before surgery, and what's going to happen is you'll be bleeding more when you're on the table.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not going to sink the case, but it does work against you. It can just kind of complicate things. Same logic with vitamin E and B complex. We tell people to stop using those about a week out. Alcohol is the same idea. It thins the blood, and it's just going to make your bruising and swelling worse.
And what about smoking?
Smoking is the big one because that can actually impede your results. We tell people 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after, ideally. It's not a bleeding issue as much as a healing issue. Smoking impairs how well the grafts take and survive. And these are grafts that are surviving purely on plasma for the first few days before they've got a real blood supply again. So you don't want to be handicapping that.
So the honest pitch is quit smoking for at least 6 weeks or your investment is going to be worse off.
Quit smoking for at least 6 weeks, ideally forever. But yeah, that's the honest pitch.
Okay, so here's where I push a little bit because all the things you've said, they sound like common sense. Don't thin your blood before surgery. Sure, that's the kind of advice you get for any kind of small procedure. So that all makes sense to me. But what's the stuff that's actually counterintuitive? Like, what are people getting wrong that you see?
I think mostly it's hair length. People think I'm getting a transplant. I should show up freshly buzzed, clean cut. It's the wrong move depending on which procedure.
So wait, if we're doing FUE versus FUT, there's actually a different answer here.
Very, very different. So if you're doing a strip or FUT, we actually want some length in the donor, about 2 inches ideally, because after the strip's removed and closed, we use a hair over hair technique. The hair on either side of that incision line grows over it and hides it while it heals. If you show up freshly shaved, there's nothing to comb over that line.
So showing up looking your sharpest is actually the wrong move if you're getting FUT.
For FUT, yeah. For FUE, it's the opposite. A lot of guys want the donor area shaved short for the procedure itself, and that's fine because FUE doesn't leave a line. It leaves thousands of tiny puncture sites scattered throughout the donor zone, which, properly done, are nearly invisible once healed.
Got it. Okay. So what's the real thing people would mess up walking in? Like what's something else that they might screw up?
Caffeine. I mean, I'm a daily coffee drinker. I get it. Most people are. And also, we're getting nervous because we're going into a procedure we've never done before. But we're going to give you something to help you relax during the procedure, and caffeine actively works against that.
And this is also where that, question of can you drive yourself home, like that whole conversation comes in, right? Because I know that we get some pushback around that as well.
Yeah, it's a frequent question, but you're getting a sedative for you're not going under for this, but you do get like an oral sedative that takes the edge off for this super long procedure. So these cases can run 6 to 8 hours, and it's pretty unsafe to get behind the wheel after taking that. So ideally, arrange a ride.
And so what else are we missing?
I mean, the stuff that matters the most is boring. Stop blood thinners, stop smoking, don't drink coffee the morning of, show up with the right hair length, arrange your ride. I mean, one thing that people miss a lot is to wear like a button down or a zip up shirt so you're not pulling a collar over this newly transplanted area. That's when I like to remind people on a lot because that's gonna make a big difference. But basically, if you follow these things, it's just going to make a huge difference between a clean surgery and a complicated one.
Okay, so quick break, and this one's actually relevant for a lot of our listeners who are probably listening from outside of the Twin Cities. Here at the Hair Restoration Institute of Minnesota, we have a hair by air program. So if you live in an area that doesn't have a great hair transplant surgeon there, you still have hair loss and you want to get it fixed, you can actually come here to Minneapolis. We will reimburse $200 of your travel expenses. That's gas in your fuel tank or a plane ticket to the Twin Cities airport here, which flies direct to 170 destinations across the country. We pick you up from baggage claim, bring you to our on-site hotel, cover 2-night stay at our on-site hotel, get your hair transplant done in a nice, calm environment. We're 12 stories up, got great views of the airport and the Minnesota Valley Wildlife Preserve here, and then you can head on home the next day. You set it and forget it. And if you want to learn more about consultations or our schedule coming up, you can visit our show notes for the link to schedule a free consultation online there. You can also check out our website, hrimn.com. Okay, so back to it. The surgery is done, so now what? Because I feel like this is where people's anxiety really spikes, not so much beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, by far the most calls we get are after the first 2 weeks of surgery. And it's usually the same things. Is this numbing sensation normal? Is the swelling normal? Did I just knock a graft loose? Why is my hair falling out 3 weeks after we just put it in?
Okay, so let's go one at a time. Pain. I've actually not heard a lot of complaints about pain. So what's it like from the people that you work with?
I mean, I haven't had a ton of surgery, but I generally tell people this is most likely going to be the least painful procedure you ever do. It's generally mild. Most people are fine on Tylenol or ibuprofen. FUT patients sometimes need something a little bit stronger because of that scalpel incision. But FUE tends to be super mild because you don't have that linear incision. And a lot of FUE patients just say that the donor area is a little sore, maybe some mild aches and things.
And so you had this done too. You had the FUE procedure. What was it like for you?
Yeah. So I think, I was expecting a lot more pain and discomfort than I actually had. I think that's the case for most people. And besides like the swelling, I followed my doctor's orders. I kept my head upright and kept that swelling kind of localized to the top of my head versus gravity bringing it down. One time I did put the leash on the dog and I bent over it and I could really feel that and see it for the next few hours. But besides that, I mean, that's pretty much it. And then after a week, I was feeling fine again. So.
But as far as pain goes, were you taking any Tylenol or ibuprofen? What would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Like literally a 1. I mean, at one point I felt some stinging, and I think it's just the nerve endings kind of coming back. It's just like a little pinprick that you feel randomly. And that was in the first maybe 12 hours, and then after that, I never felt it again. I just took the Tylenol as prescribed by my doctor, and kinda, like, backloaded it, so I never felt anything.
Okay, so mild pain, very, very light on that. Yeah, swelling, you mentioned there's a few things we should do to keep the swelling down. People are kind of calling you. They say, "Oh, my forehead's swelling, something's wrong," and that's just physics, basically.
Basically, yeah. I mean, as long as you are for the first 3 nights sleeping at, like, a 45-degree angle, you'll keep that swelling retained up here, and you won't really notice it in your face or anything like that.
Okay, so what about hair falling out? Because like that, if you have the hair transplant done, your hair is falling out, feels like the whole thing failed. No.
Yeah, I mean, that one's the scariest for sure, and where we see the most panic from the patients. Um, the transplanted hair sheds usually a week or 2 after surgery, but the follicle itself stays under the skin. That's what we care about. That's the important part. It's just shedding the hair shaft, which is totally normal. There's a resting period before it starts growing back for real. And that takes, you probably will see something around 3.5 months later, for new growth. And it's usually a little finer and wispier than obviously the final product.
Okay, that's a lot of patients ask of our patient that like they're gonna see their hair change and shed a little bit before it gets better.
That's exactly why we talk about it in the pre-op instructions and beforehand. It's the most important part of this, so they're not freaking out, like if we had missed that.
Okay, so let's talk about hair washing because I feel like when I've talked to clients getting their hair transplant done, that's an area where a lot of people are worried about doing damage to their hair.
Yeah, so for FUT and FUE both, it's really the same thing. In the recipient area where the new grafts went in, you got to be really gentle in the shower for the first couple of weeks. We want you to just shower neck down early on, and it's kind of going to be this gentle pour of lukewarm water with shampoo that you're going to be rinsing your scalp with. You can also use a washcloth and put the shampoo in the washcloth and then put that over your scalp, and then the shower that acts as, that'll absorb all that so it doesn't impact your hair follicles. And then, after 5 to 7 days you can shower normally again.
Yeah, I think I've heard that a lot of our clients said that the washcloth technique ends up being a lot easier, and they like to go with that. So that's the recipient area. So if you're getting your hairline done, that's what we're doing here in the front. But the donor side on the back of the head, that's probably different between FUE and FUT. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the recovery with FUT is definitely more because you have that staple or suture line. So you got to keep it clean, and we don't want too much tension on it. If you're into the gym, don't go in there and deadlift 200 pounds right after this. With FUE, there's no line, just a bunch of those little dots and sites. And honestly, those tend to heal super fast, like within the first week. So patients can usually wash a little bit more directly there without worrying about dislodging anything since there's no grafts or anything like that.
So what if someone calls and says that a graft actually fell out?
It actually happens sometimes, usually from someone bumping the area without realizing it. We've had stories where people are leaving the clinic and getting into their ride and their head's kind of numb, from the local anesthetic. And so you're kind of off balance when that happens, and they'll hit their head getting into their car, so they can just come right back up and we can sanitize the follicle and everything and put it back in. So yeah, people just, there's like a little bit of misjudgment with that initially, but don't toss it. If it does happen, just give us a call and we'll figure something out.
Is that a common thing? I mean, I'm thinking back in the clients that I've worked with, and like I know people will say that they'll see the little hair shedding out, but to actually have a whole follicle come out, maybe like that happened. I don't know, once in the 1,000 or so people that I've worked with. Has it happened a lot for you?
No, I mean, y- the thing is, you will know when it happens. So people, I think, they'll misjudge like the shedding process that's normal for this recovery with like graft dislodging, and like a graft being dislodged, like you're gonna know there's gonna be some blood drawn, things like that. So
Okay, so let's talk about the timeline for actually looking normal back in public. 'Cause that's a question a lot of people want answered. Sometimes people don't ask directly, but that's often a big factor when it comes to scheduling the specific date for someone's hair transplant.
Yeah. So for haircuts, we generally want you to wait 3 to 4 weeks before the first one. If it's going to be the former, if you're going to be closer to that 3 week mark, make sure you come in here. So we have like some experienced stylists actually cutting around transplanted hair. Um, and then for the full redness fading, that's a matter of, that just comes down to skin tones. For some of the fair skin patients, we can see the pink kind of tone linger for a few months, and that's totally normal. And then as your follicles are coming through, it's just going to cover all that up. So you're kind of just waiting for that point. But a full mature result, that's going to be closer to the 9-12 month mark, and sometimes a little beyond. We generally just advise to give it a year for this.
So for like all the Instagram friendly people who want that instant gratification, the name of the game here is patience, really.
That's exactly it. Nobody wants to hear check back in a year, but that's the honest timeline.
Gotcha. Okay, so now let's go to our segment where we talk about our latest articles on our blog. This segment, so it's almost a sequel to everything that we just talked about. It's called Shedding After Finasteride Post-Transplant, Normal Reset or Red Flag.
Yeah, this is a good one. It untangles three things people lump into one panic. So regular post-surgical shock loss, a second shed that finasteride itself can cause when you start it, and what happens when those two collide because someone starts the medication right around the same time as surgery.
So starting your meds and getting your transplant in the same month is basically stacking two different possible shedding opportunities on top of each other.
Right. And then you can't tell which one you're looking at. The post walks through it, plus gives you the actual signs that mean call your doctor instead of just wait it out.
Okay, so the full breakdown's on the blog, which you can access at abovethehairline.com. The link is also in the show notes, so go and read it before you spiral over what might be a totally normal shedding experience.
All right, so we're going to go to our hair trend of the week. This week I actually have two because they're both worth 30 seconds. First, Hair Systems had a real moment on Reddit this week. There was a post basically titled, "Please normalize men wearing wigs," that pulled over 800 upvotes and 300 plus comments. Generally supportive, not the usual shame spiral. And a separate thread talking about Landon Donovan and if he wears a hair system.
Wait, that's the soccer guy?
That's him. The point is the whole conversation around systems is shifting from embarrassing secret to totally normal option, which is good because that's literally our dermal lens line.
Okay, good. And so what's the second topic that you got?
Okay, so the second one's less wholesome. There's a reoccurring claim floating around the dutasteride minoxidil threads that taking minoxidil sublingually, like dissolving it under your tongue instead of the topical version, bypasses the liver and avoids side effects.
I was going to ask you what that term meant, so I'm glad that you helped us define it. So sublingually, is that even true?
No, that's not how oral minoxidil works. It still goes through your system the way any oral medication does. It's just not accurate, and it's the exact kind of forum biohack that sounds clever and isn't.
Okay, so hair systems are having a moment. That's a really good thing. The sublingual minoxidil liver bypass myth, maybe we skip that one.
That's it.
Okay, and so now we're going to go to our unanswered question of the week. So this one had 43 comments and still ended with nobody agreeing. Isn't that the online forum for you? Someone asked, does hair transplanted hair actually stay coarse and wiry forever, or does it eventually go back to normal?
Yeah, that thread was a mess. Some people said it softens up in a couple years. Some people said it's permanent. So here's the real answer.
All right, please tell us.
It comes down to something called donor dominance. The hair you transplant keeps the characteristics of wherever it came from on the back of your head forever. That's what makes it permanent in the first place. And donor hair there is often just naturally a little more coarser and wavier than the fine hair it's replacing. So it's not reverting to your old texture. It's settling into its donor texture.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. You can kind of feel it for yourself on the back of the head versus in the front. So I see what you're saying there. And the wiriness that people see and feel at month 8, that's not a symptom. That's just the hair being honest about where it's from.
Yeah. And earlier on, we talked about how long this whole process takes. And we said sometimes it's past 12 months. Well, that's where this comes in. So when your hair is fully grown out at like that 12-month mark, a lot of our patients are using like product and gel to kind of counteract that coarseness. And then maybe month 18 to 24, so a year and a half to 2 years post-op, it'll just kind of take its place along the rest of your hair and be a lot more natural for you.
Gotcha. And we actually wrote this whole article up as well for our blog. So if you want to head on over to abovethehairline.com/blog, you have it on there, and you've already gotten the podcast version here.
Yep. And I think that one really needed an answer. So now we've got one.
All right. So let's close this up. If I'm boiling down this whole conversation for someone who's about to book the procedure, what's the one thing you actually want them to remember?
Yeah. I mean, the pre-op instructions aren't just a formality. It's not like the terms and conditions you scroll through on your iPhone update. You should pay attention. Stopping the blood thinners, showing up with the right hair length, depending on your procedure, and being patient through the shedding and swelling phases of the ugly duckling months. That stuff's super important. So it's as important as what happens in the chair on procedure day.
So the real skill you're selling isn't just surgical technique.
Right. It's getting people to do the actual boring homework. That's most of my job.
Which, for the record, so is parenting. I got 2 small kids at home, and getting someone to do the boring thing that they don't want to do, that's actually really good for them. I mean, that's a very viable life skill, Alec. It's going to serve you well.
Careful. Don't compare my patients to your kids at dinner.
I would never. It's actually not like getting my kids to eat their vegetables. It's more like getting them to admit they already had a lollipop before I give them another. Sometimes the patients I see, I don't know if it's true for you, but they might forget that they were taking an aspirin, or they don't bring it up because they don't want to be a bother. You got to let us know. And my kids are actually very honest if they've already had a treat, probably because they know I'm going to give them one anyways. But if you're out there listening to this and you've taken the aspirin, just go ahead and tell us. We're asking for your own good.
Similar energy for sure.
All right. And that's our show. I'm Nate, and that was Alec. And this has been Above the Hairline. If you have any questions, you can email podcast@abovethehairline.com. And we'll see you next time with a fresh episode. Take care now.
Follow the instructions. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.